Guys, I don't know if you know this, but Rachel Zegler never did anything wrong in her entire life.
No.
And now she's back to tell us all why we should not have a problem with her, and that Snow White is going to be a hit if we all just get behind it. Rachel Zegler did this piece in Variety. I say that she did this piece. It's not really that she did this piece. Someone, probably Salome Hailu and Katsi Stefan, did this piece in Variety that reads very much like a publicist's dream of reframing the narrative around this starlet here. By the way, this picture on the right, that I don't know what camera they used, but I think my iPhone might have taken. They should have just used an iPhone in portrait mode. I think that's
yeah, it's a weak photo. But to be fair to Rachel, she's never done anything wrong ever. So it's us. It's our interpretation of it that is incorrect.
So have you all? I've read this piece in its entirety. Culture, I think you've gone through this piece. We talked about it with Polly from Latino Slant last night. Vash, have you had the pleasure of going through this yet, piece by piece? Because I got to tell you, you were wrong about everything about Rachel Zegler.
I am willing to take it on the chin, I suppose. I guess I'm just one of those evil, nasty trolls that just gets everything wrong in my. I really need to apologize for the whiteness in my lineage and for reading this all wrong. No, I unfortunately have not had the pleasure of reading this article in its entirety. I've only seen bits and pieces of it. Obviously, I edited the video that dropped on That Park Place talking about it today, but I have not deep dived into it.
Yeah, okay, so we're not going to go through the entire thing, but there are some things about this. Here's where she gets into stuff that's more relevant to Disney. Right here. And we're talking about Snow White at this point. Something about the casting of Snow White. And by the way, she goes into what we talked about earlier about how they rewrote the origin of the name Snow White. And she says, the actress's Colombian heritage, according to people who are anti-woke, disqualified her from playing the princess from Disney's 1937 musical fantasy, described as having hair as black as ebony and skin as white as snow. Never mind the fact that the character Blancana Nieves is just as popular in Spanish-speaking countries as she is in the U.S. This is not an argument against. These are not exclusive arguments here. That's silly. She was my mom's favorite princess, Zegler says. When she was growing up, there weren't a lot of dark-haired princesses, and that was the one she could relate to. So she's saying that no actress had black or brown hair when her mom was growing up. That is a ridiculous argument. Or she's trying to say that Disney didn't have any dark-haired princesses.
Well, I mean, there were no princesses to speak of before 1937. That's one. But two, dark-haired princesses. I mean, perhaps, maybe at that time, but obviously that's been rounded out to include many princesses, especially in the time that Rachel Zegler has been alive. So that's this all weird thing to say. Why deep dive so much into the representation of these princesses? Many of the stories that are associated with these princesses really do appeal to a large gamut of the populace, which is why these films, around the time that they were released and subsequent releases after every 7 years in theaters, were so successful the world over.
Yeah. She is incredibly out of touch with reality. She has been for pretty much her entire public existence. She's been surrounded by a circle of people that don't tell her anything that's truthful, including about her own self or what the perception is of her and or the reception to her statements that she's actually garnering. This is the very definition of living in a bubble type of person. And she is a giant turnoff to most audiences. And as Jonas deftly pointed out, she's from a generation that doesn't seem to actually buy anything, attend anything, do anything, for the most part. I know those are general statements, but I don't see her as being the epitome of her generation. She is not the end all be all, despite what this puff piece from Variety wants you to believe.
Right. And I'll also add in, there was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and then it was a full 13 years before they had another princess film. It was a very long time. There were the first film, obviously, for Walt Disney feature animation was Snow White, and then the 12th film was the next princess film. So it was a very long time before they had a second princess in that line. So Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, Bambi, my personal favorites from that era, Saludos Amigos and Three Caballeros, Make Mine Music, Fun and Fancy Free, Melody Time, Ichabod and Mr. Toad, the package films going from 1940 until 1949 right. For the most part. Obviously, there's some gaps in there, but the princess line was not focused on until the 1950s, and still then there was a long gap before you got into the 1990s, when I would say that Disney was actually doing a pretty good job of putting in diverse princesses. Ariel being a Dutch fairy tale about a red-haired princess, Beauty and the Beast, Mulan,
Jasmine.
Jasmine, and depending on how you view, she wasn't a princess, but Esmeralda, Romani, so dark hair, tan skin.
I would include Pocahontas in that list as well.
Right. I think Disney, especially in the 90s when it wasn't a big deal, they were actually doing a very good job of adding diversity into their films. So this idea that they are all of a sudden now breaking the mold and creating diverse princesses, I don't think that's really the issue. In fact, most people in watching the Mulan live action remake, which on that film, that is like taking ether. It is just a boring film. Start to finish. I'd rather watch Agatha. So let's get back to this. Again, she tries to reference the 1990s again to try to say that Disney is not diverse enough now. So Zegler doesn't bother trying to understand why it's so hard for some of those diehard Disney adults to picture a Latina in their beloved princess shoes. She's making a children's movie after all, and she remembers spending her own childhood obsessing over ABC's 1997 TV movie that starred Whitney Houston as the fairy godmother alongside an 18-year-old Brandy as Cinderella. I grew up in a house where that was Cinderella. Obviously, we watched the cartoon, but a child's mind is the most amazing thing, where it's just like, okay, that's Cinderella, she says, but the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, blue-dressed Cinderella from the 1950s cartoon is also Cinderella. Also, Hilary Duff is Cinderella in A Cinderella Story, she smirks. I was able to comprehend those things at a young age. What's the difference between Cinderella and Snow White, though? Cinderella's race doesn't play into the story, and the skin color of Cinderella does not play into the story in any way whatsoever. So I think this is something, and this has been said over and over again, that if it happened and they just said, yeah, it's weird, we're obviously doing a different thing and we're going to move on from it, then there would still be a segment who would say something about it. They would say it's weird, and then we would move on. But that's not where this stopped. She continues to talk. Let's get to the interesting comments that she's making here. Social media outrage about Zegler being cast as Snow White only got louder as time went on. She began saying in red carpet interviews in the summer of 2022 that her version of the iconic princess wouldn't spend her days pining over a man. She called aspects of the original story weird and said that the 1937's film Prince literally stalks Snow White. Overnight, online trolls took shots at Zegler's disdain for the animated classic, deeming her unworthy of portraying the OG Disney heroine. Here's something I'm going to say. The internet is closer to real life than you realize. This is where discourse happens. So I'm going to say that most discourse about this movie, that we have no record of what private conversations between people who are commenting about this film are. If they're saying that there's some offline conversation where this is not being said, that it's weird that she insulted the original film, okay, whatever. The conversation is happening online, so they're trying to paint the entire thing as trolls. I don't think that's a fair characterization, and I think they know that it's not a fair characterization.
No, and I think a lot of the apprehension initially came from Disney has been known to recast, let's say, iconic roles and utilize certain actors and actresses of various races in order to fill in those roles. People have arguments about whether or not that's kosher or not or whatever. You have a line in the original film, what is it? Skin as white as snow. So when Rachel Zegler was originally cast for this, it was kind of like, that doesn't really befit the description that was set up in 1937. Again, people have, they've gone back and forth on this. My tact has always been, hey, look, if she is a remarkable talent, both as an actress and as a singer, well then maybe we can go ahead and incorporate that. But her actions and conduct after that, well, they really give me pause whether or not Rachel Zegler was the right choice for all this.
Right. And I don't think she has the poise to handle this. She says Zegler's not surprised by what she sees as people's willful misunderstanding of her comments. It's par for the course for an outspoken young woman in the public eye. Maybe this was Disney's problem. They took a role that is traditionally seen as a sweet and innocent role. That's what Snow White is in the original movie. By the way, she's supposed to embody someone who is a victim, who is put upon, and who is sweet, regardless of all that. By the way, very similar to Cinderella. They repeated that very well in the live action remake, which was done by Ken Branagh. Have courage and be kind was the theme of that film. But that I'm not seeing that in Zegler. So here's how she characterizes her online discourse and also the way people reacted to it. I've watched women get torn down my whole life, my whole career, she says. We'll watch it in the election that's upcoming already, making it political for no reason. We're going to witness that for a long time. I fear sometimes it can feel like we're going back. It certainly felt that way when that was happening. Zegler isn't immune to harsh criticism, even if her bubbly demeanor, makes her seem that way. Though she's been tempted to stay off social media, she won't. I don't like to give them the satisfaction of knowing they hurt me in the moment, she says. You give them a lot of power by taking a social media break.
This is a 23-year-old trying to give you a lecture. No, thank you. You haven't had any life experience other than being coddled. You have no idea what the real world is like. You don't know what hardship is. You have no authority to give anybody a lecture. And your entire life, all 23 years, you've witnessed women being torn down. Wake up, because your perception of reality is delusional. And you're in part tearing down this entire nation and civilization with your points of view. Anyway, sorry.
You're tearing down civilization is a very good point. So I think Disney is struggling right now because they have no semblance of magic at this point.
They really don't have the company's the customer's best interest in mind. No. They are adversarial to the very people that support them, so much so that they are losing, surprisingly, a bunch of pixie dusters. The people that just been huffing the powder for so very long from Disney, that they were finally awakened and startled awake that this is the kind of garbage that's being pumped at them right now. It's just it's infuriating. Sorry, I'm just it's a fair point. But this piece right here, I'm trying to think, who is this piece supposed to help at this point? And this is a person who has floundered in public speaking for a very long time. Her comments were awkward, and she made some weird jokes. The theater kid energy is what's been discussed in the past, but of course there's this moment where, and we need to frame it before I put this back on screen. There were a lot of people talking about the trailer for Snow White, which was almost universally disliked. I think it's at 1.2 million dislikes. Over that,
it's and I want to say less than 100,000 likes on that trailer at this moment. It's not a very good trailer. For some reason, they choose to do like the ethereal, slowed down version of "Whistle While You Work" instead of maybe some of the more inspirational songs for the movie. And Rachel Zegler responds by bringing it into a geopolitical sphere and says, and as always, and supports one side in a very heated conflict, which we don't need to say where we lie on this discussion here, but I think it's reprehensible that she decides to take the marketing of a film, which probably cost $500 million to make at this point before they even get into marketing. And she says, over the past year, by the way, one of her co-stars is on the other side of that, being a person from Israel. That would be Gadot. Over the past year, Zegler has also been an advocate for the other side of that conflict. And as expected, her comments have been put under a microscope. No, not put under a microscope. She shoved them in the way of everything else and said, no, we need to talk about this instead. Just one day after appearing at D23 in August, where Zegler teed up the first footage from Snow White for a crowd of adoring fans, she posted a note of gratitude on X, but it was the last line of her post that drew the most attention. And as always, there you go.
You know what she needs to do is take a page out of my book and just say, get your game on.
Yeah. Or she says it best when she says nothing at all.
Oh, come on.
I really don't understand why they let her talk at this point. Like, I feel like it would be better to recast this film with a different actress and release that rather than continue to throw good money after bad, because it's good money until it gets attached to this film at this point. And she tries to characterize it in this way and say that we're nearing 1 year since this happened, and she's trying to do some both sides stuff. I really don't get it. Why is Disney okay with this, or are they just stuck until this movie comes out? I don't understand it in any way.
And we've seen maybe instances in which Disney has tried to reframe this and try to get away from some of these comments and so forth. But this article just undoes a lot of that. And as Culture said, I mean, Rachel Zegler was cast in a Steven Spielberg film, West Side Story, when she was 16 years old. I mean, that's the kind of lacking in life experience and hardship that Culture is talking about right here. So when she preaches like she does, when she virtue signals the way she does, man, it not only does damage to her, but to her projects and everybody associated with it. I mean, Gal Gadot, I feel real bad for her, because I think she's a company gal, maybe, in that she's looking to support any project that she's a part of, no matter what studio it actually comes from. And here is Rachel Zegler doing everything that she possibly can to tank this film before it even is released. It is wild. It's crazy. And like you said, Jonas, I am surprised that Disney hasn't put the kibosh on this before then.
Nobody can convince me to be a fan of this young person at this point. And look, I've given her the benefit of the doubt for the better part of 3 years now. When she started acting up after West Side Story's complete total failure, I tried to find a way to appreciate her performance in Hunger Games prequel, where she wasn't half bad, but she certainly didn't add to the film. In fact, the film was okay in spite of her and her performance. So, like I said, I've done everything I can, but she speaks of willful ignorance in the piece. She's the only willfully ignorant person there is when it comes to all of this, not recognizing that she is not a part of the majority. She is the extreme minority. And, her voice is not, falling within, the bounds of polite and normal conversation. Her viewpoints don't fall within that either. And she is doing nothing but alienating the people who actually spend money. And that's the point, right? Because my job here on the internet when I'm on panels is to talk about, is this going to be a profitable endeavor? Is what you're doing going to aid in making money? She does not in any way. If anything, you keep saying it. Why do they let her talk? They shouldn't. She shouldn't be running her social media accounts. She shouldn't even have them, because they are a detriment to anything that she's in.
Before we move on here, let's see. We got a super chat from Retromeister for $5. As a wise man once said, "Shut up, silly woman." Need I say more? I feel bad for the young ones here that are being led down the path of self-damage here. I think they're very confident that what they're saying is going to be convincing. Maybe they're thinking to themselves, well, this would convince me. Why would it not convince everyone else? She needs a publicist.
She does. Well, and she's regurgitating the garbage that's been, pumped around elementary through college. Her education was tainted with all of these incredibly inconsistently American policies. Let's just say.
Yeah.
That was a highlight from our live stream on That Park Place, where the full stream can be accessed by members to the That Park Place YouTube channel. But what about you? What were your thoughts on this particular story? Please let us know in the comments below. Like this video if you did like this video. Share us out, as it helps us out tremendously against the YouTube algorithm. And thank you so much for watching. T3, BO. Please comment, like, and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe to That Park Place Podcasts Online, your source for exclusive content and highlights from WDW Pro, The Pro Show, and That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.